The church was filled with soft, golden light streaming through stained glass windows. Emma stood near the altar, her hands lightly clasped, her heart beating a little faster than usual. Today was meant to be the happiest day of her life. After months of planning, laughter, and quiet moments with Mark, the man she had chosen to marry, everything seemed perfect. The soft murmur of the guests, the gentle rustle of silk dresses, and the scent of fresh lilies surrounded her. Still, beneath the calm surface, a quiet unease settled deep inside her chest, a flutter she couldn't explain. Mark stood at the altar, his eyes full of hope and love. He smiled warmly when their eyes met, but Emma couldn't stop her mind from wandering back to another time. A time when life was different, when she believed in a love that was wild and uncertain, but real and raw. Lucas, the billionaire who once promised her the world, who had vanished without a word, leaving her heart shattered and unsure. That chapter of her life had been closed, or so she thought. The priest began speaking softly, his voice steady and comforting. The ceremony was unfolding as planned, the familiar words flowing like a gentle river. Guests sat quietly, their faces glowing with smiles and anticipation. Emma took a deep breath and forced herself to focus on Mark, on the future she had chosen. But the flutter in her heart grew stronger, like a warning she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors at the back of the church opened with a slow, deliberate creak. Heads turned sharply, the atmosphere shifting instantly from calm to tense. Emma's breath hitched as she caught sight of the man standing in the doorway. Tall, confident, dressed in an expensive suit that seemed almost too bright for the quiet church. It was Lucas. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on her, and in that moment, the world around her seemed to blur. Time slowed. The murmurs stopped. The priest faltered mid-sentence, unsure of what to do next. Emma's heart pounded so loudly she feared everyone could hear it. Lucas took a few steps down the aisle, his hand reaching out, trembling slightly. His gaze was intense, filled with a mixture of regret, hope, and something raw and vulnerable. The guests exchanged shocked glances. Mark's smile disappeared, replaced by confusion and a hint of anger. Emma's mind raced. Why now? After all this time? She wanted to turn away, to protect herself, to finish what she had started with Mark. But the look in Lucas's eyes pulled her forward, breaking down the walls she had carefully built. Lucas's voice was low but urgent. Emma, please don't say those vows. I know I hurt you before, and I can't undo the past. But I've changed. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance. One last chance to make things right. His words hung heavy in the air, and the silence that followed was deafening. Emma's chest tightened as memories flooded back. The late nights filled with laughter, the promises whispered under the stars, the painful goodbye she never saw coming. She glanced at Mark, steady and patient, waiting for the moment she would become his wife. But inside, she felt torn, caught between the safety of what she knew and the uncertain pull of a love she thought was gone forever. The priest finally cleared his throat, but Emma barely heard it. Her eyes stayed locked on Lucas's hand, still extended toward her, waiting. The entire church held its breath, waiting for her to speak, to decide. But Emma's voice caught in her throat, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Her mind screamed with questions. Could she risk her heart again? Was Lucas's plea genuine or just desperation? Would saying, "I do," to Mark mean closing the door forever? The seconds stretched endlessly as she searched for the courage to respond, knowing whatever she chose would change everything. The guests remained silent, the tension thick in the air. The golden light from the windows seemed to dim, as if the church itself was holding its breath. Emma's eyes filled with tears, not just from fear, but from the hope that maybe, just maybe, Love could find a way back. Finally, she took a shaky breath and reached out toward Lucas, her hand trembling as it hovered just above his. It wasn't a yes, not yet, but it was the first crack in the armor she had built around her heart. The moment had come. The wedding she thought would be simple had become something far more complicated, and Emma knew that life, just like love, was never as clear-cut as it seemed. The church remained silent, the air thick with tension and unspoken questions. All eyes were fixed on Emma and Lucas. Her hand hovered uncertainly, as if suspended between the past and the future. Lucas's gaze never wavered, full of hope and raw emotion. The murmurs among the guests had stopped completely. Even the priest seemed unsure of how to continue. Mark stood frozen at the altar, his face a mask of shock and hurt. He had been so sure this day would mark the beginning of a new chapter, one built on trust and love. Now, with Lucas's unexpected return, everything felt like it was unraveling in front of him. His fingers curled into a fist at his side, but he said nothing. Instead, he watched Emma with an intensity that made the moment feel even heavier. Emma swallowed hard, feeling every heartbeat echo in her chest. The warm smile Mark had given her only moments ago seemed like a distant memory now. She looked at Lucas, seeing the man who had once promised her everything, but had disappeared without explanation. His eyes were glossy, full of regret and longing. "Why now?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The question hung between them like a fragile thread. Lucas took a cautious step forward, closing the small space between them. His voice was low and steady as he spoke. "I never meant to hurt you, Emma. I thought I was doing what was best by leaving, but I was wrong. I was scared of what love could cost me." His hand finally reached hers, fingers trembling as they brushed against hers gently. "I've changed, not just in wealth or status, but in how I see us, how I see you." The guests shifted in their seats. Some exchanged looks of disbelief, others of sympathy. The tension was almost unbearable. Emma's mind raced, memories flooding her. Long nights filled with laughter, whispered dreams, and a love that had felt too big to last. She recalled the pain of his sudden absence, the loneliness that followed, and the slow healing she found with Mark. Yet here was Lucas, standing before her with a sincerity that was hard to ignore. Mark's voice finally broke the silence. "Emma, please," he said quietly but firmly. "You've made your choice. We're here for you." His eyes, however, betrayed his hurt and confusion. Emma's gaze flicked back to Mark, to the man who had stood by her through thick and thin. He was steady, patient, the safe harbor she had chosen after heartbreak. Yet the storm inside her still raged. Could she truly commit to a future when a part of her heart still ached for what once was? The priest cleared his throat, the sound breaking the heavy stillness. "Emma, take your time," he said gently. "This moment is yours." His words were a quiet invitation for her to speak her truth. She closed her eyes briefly, trying to steady her racing thoughts. When she opened them, they were wet with tears she hadn't expected to shed. "Lucas," she began, voice soft but clear, "when you left, I felt like a part of me was lost forever. I built walls to protect myself, walls that Mark helped me build back up slowly." Her hand squeezed Lucas's gently, a fragile connection between the past and present. "But seeing you here now, after all this time, it's hard to pretend those feelings never existed. I'm torn more than I thought possible." A few guests sniffled quietly, moved by her honesty. The warmth of the moment was bittersweet, filled with love, regret, and painful truth. Mark's expression softened, though a sadness lingered in his eyes. He understood this was bigger than him, bigger than a simple wedding day. Lucas nodded slowly. "I don't expect everything to be perfect or easy, but I'm willing to fight for you, for us." If you want to walk away, I'll understand. But if there's even a small part of you that believes we can try again, I want to take that chance." Emma looked at both men, the steady kindness in Mark's eyes and the desperate hope in Lucas's. Her heart was a battlefield of emotions, and the decision ahead felt overwhelming. She wanted to honor her own truth, whatever that might be. The guests waited, breaths held in silent anticipation. Emma's voice wavered as she finally said, "I need time. I can't say yes today or no. I owe myself honesty, and I owe you both that." The priest nodded with understanding, signaling the ceremony was paused but not over. The church seemed to exhale collectively, the tension easing slightly. The wedding was no longer just about two people joining their lives. It was about choices, forgiveness, and the unpredictable path of the heart. Emma's eyes lingered on Lucas's outstretched hand and then turned to Mark's steady presence. This moment wasn't an ending, but the beginning of a journey that none of them could have expected. The church remained still, heavy with silence. Emma's confession had sent ripples through the crowd, but it was her eyes that told the real story. Eyes filled with confusion, pain, and a longing she couldn't quite name. The moment was fragile, like a delicate thread stretched too thin. Everyone waited, unsure what would come next, as if time itself was holding its breath. Mark stood quietly, his jaw tight, hands clenched at his sides. His heart ached in ways he couldn't put into words. He had loved Emma long before this day, and the thought of losing her to the past was unbearable. Yet he understood her pain. The man standing at the aisle was not just a stranger. He was a chapter in Emma's life she hadn't fully closed. Mark wanted to reach out to comfort her, but he also knew some wounds needed space and time to heal. Lucas remained where he was, still holding Emma's hand gently. His eyes searched hers, pleading for any sign that hope remained. He knew he had made mistakes, ones that had hurt her deeply, but standing here, watching her struggle with her feelings, he felt more vulnerable than ever before. This was no longer about pride or wealth. It was about a chance to prove himself worthy of the love they once shared. Emma took a shaky breath, the weight of their gazes pressing down on her. She remembered all the promises Lucas had made, the dreams they had painted together. She also remembered the nights she cried alone, the silence he left behind, and the fear that had settled inside her heart. How could she trust him again? Could she? And what about Mark, whose steady love had given her hope when everything else seemed lost? She glanced at Mark, seeing the depth of his care in his eyes. He was the safe harbor she had chosen after heartbreak, a man who had been patient, kind, and constant. But the pull of her past with Lucas tugged at her like a stubborn storm, refusing to be ignored. Emma felt trapped between two worlds, caught in a painful crossroad she hadn't anticipated on her wedding day. The priest stepped forward gently, his voice soft but firm. "Emma, this moment belongs to you. Whatever you decide, know that honesty is the greatest gift you can give to yourself and those around you." Her lips trembled as she tried to find the words to explain the storm raging inside her. "I thought I was ready," she whispered. "Ready to leave the past behind, to start fresh with Mark. But Lucas's return, it's like a wound I thought healed has been opened again." She paused, blinking back tears. "I don't want to hurt either of you. I don't want to lose the life I've started to build, but I can't ignore the feelings that never really left." The guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some dabbing at their eyes, others silently holding their breath. The raw honesty in Emma's voice touched something deep within them. It was a reminder that love isn't simple or neat. It's messy, complicated, and often painful. Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "I'm not asking you to make a decision now," he said softly. "Just know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere this time." His voice cracked slightly, betraying the years of regret and longing he carried inside. Whatever you need, whatever you decide, I'll respect it. Mark took a step forward, his voice steady but gentle. Emma, I love you. And I want you to be happy, truly happy. If that means you need time or space, or even a chance to figure out what your heart wants, I'll wait. His words were filled with a quiet strength that made Emma's heart ache. He wasn't just a fiancé anymore. He was someone who understood the complexity of love and the pain of uncertainty. The church was silent once more, but the atmosphere had shifted. What had begun as a wedding ceremony had become a crossroads for three hearts intertwined by love, regret, and hope. Emma's tears finally spilled over, and she allowed herself to feel the full weight of the moment, its fear, its sorrow, but also its possibility. She wiped her eyes and looked out at the faces around her, at the people who had gathered to witness what they believed would be a joyful union. Instead, they had been given a glimpse into the messy, real struggle of love, the kind that doesn't fit into neat boxes or easy endings. Emma's voice was steady now, filled with quiet determination. I need time. Not just a few days or weeks, but time to understand what I truly want and who I am. She looked back at Lucas, then at Mark, and added, I owe you both that much honesty. The priest nodded solemnly. Then let this day mark the beginning of a new chapter, one where truth leads the way. The congregation exhaled as if a great weight had been lifted, and the ceremony paused, suspended in uncertainty, but also in hope. Emma knew the road ahead would be difficult and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a flicker of peace. Because love, she realized, was never about rushing to a decision. It was about understanding, forgiveness, and the courage to face the unknown. The church doors closed softly behind the guests, as whispers of the unexpected unfolded inside. Emma stood between two men whose futures stretched out before her like separate roads, each shadowed by the past, but holding a promise of what might come. The once celebratory room had transformed into a silent battlefield of hearts and memories. Lucas's eyes never left Emma's face. He was no longer the confident man she once knew, but someone humbled by time and mistakes. His voice was gentle but firm. Emma, I'm not here to rewrite the past or ask you to forget what happened. I'm here because I believe we can build something new. Something real. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo. The two of them laughing, caught in a moment of happiness. I kept this, not as a reminder of what I lost, but as a promise that I want to find that happiness again. With you. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The photo was a shard of a life she almost forgot, a life full of hope and love before it was shattered. For a moment, all the fear and doubt melted, replaced by a fragile warmth. But the scars were still there, beneath the surface, reminding her of the pain she had endured. Mark took a step forward, his eyes shining with quiet determination. Emma, I'm here because I believe in the future we can have together. Not perfect, but real. I've loved you from the moment I met you, and I'll keep loving you, even if it means standing in the shadows while you figure things out. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the strength it took to hold his emotions at bay. Emma looked at Mark and saw a steady foundation she could lean on, a life of kindness and patience. But she also felt the pull of something more unpredictable with Lucas, a past filled with passion and wild dreams that still echoed in her heart. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and she struggled to find the words to explain the storm inside. I never thought this day would look like this. I thought I had made peace with the past. But seeing you here, Lucas, it's like everything I tried to forget has come rushing back. I'm scared. Scared of making the wrong choice. Scared of hurting you both. The guests watched, their faces a mixture of sympathy and curiosity. Emma's vulnerability laid bare the messy truth of love, not the fairy tale they expected, but something raw and complicated. Lucas stepped closer, his voice softening. "I don't want to be the cause of your fear, Emma. I want to be the reason you feel safe again. If you give me that chance, I promise I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy." Mark nodded, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. "Whatever you decide, know that I'll respect you. But I hope you'll let me be the one to build a future with you. A future where you can finally find peace." Emma felt the weight of their words settling over her. The choice wasn't simple, and the path ahead was uncertain. But in that moment, surrounded by people who cared deeply for her, she realized that the most important thing was to be honest with herself. "I need to take a step back," she said quietly. "I need to understand who I am, what I want, and what love truly means for me. I can't rush into a decision just because today is supposed to be a day of certainty." The room seemed to breathe with her words, as if everyone present understood the courage it took to admit uncertainty. Lucas lowered the photo gently and extended his hand once more. "Then I'll wait, no matter how long it takes." Mark reached out too, his hand steady and sure beside Lucas's. Emma looked between their hands and then slowly, carefully, took them both. It wasn't a promise or a decision, just a moment of connection, a fragile hope that maybe, someday, her heart would find the answer. The priest stepped forward again, his voice calm and kind. "Let this moment be a reminder that love is not always easy, but it is always worth the effort. Take your time, Emma. We will all be here when you are ready." The guests began to stir softly, the tension easing like the slow release of a held breath. Emma's eyes were still filled with tears, but there was a new light in them, a mixture of fear and hope, pain and possibility. The wedding had been interrupted, yes, but in its place was something far more honest, a chance to rewrite the story with truth, patience, and love. Emma understood that the road ahead might be long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to walk it. The church slowly emptied, the echo of hushed conversations lingering in the quiet air. Emma stood alone for a moment, the weight of the day pressing down on her like a heavy fog. Her fingers still trembled slightly, tangled between the outstretched hands of two men who meant everything and nothing all at once. The vows she had prepared now felt like distant words from a life that didn't belong to her anymore. Outside, the world continued as if nothing had changed. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the cobblestone streets. Emma's breath caught as she stepped into the cool evening air. She felt exposed, like her heart was bare beneath the fading light. Every step she took was heavy with questions she didn't know how to answer. How do you choose between a steady love and a passionate past? Between the comfort of certainty and the thrill of possibility? Lucas's plea echoed in her mind. His words weren't grand promises of wealth or power anymore. They were simple and raw, filled with regret and hope. He had laid his heart open, asking for a chance to rebuild what was broken. But rebuilding trust, Emma knew, was a slow, uncertain journey. Mark's presence felt like a steady anchor. His love wasn't flashy or dramatic, but it was steady and true. He had been there when Emma's world fell apart, helping her pick up the pieces with patience and kindness. Yet even his steady hand couldn't silence the ache that Lucas's return had reopened. Emma paused by a small park bench, the soft rustle of leaves calming her restless thoughts. She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold her heart together. The truth was clear but painful. She couldn't rush this. Not now, not ever. To decide her future meant facing the scars of her past and the promise of what could be. The following days felt surreal. The wedding was postponed, and whispers spread through the town like wildfire. Some people judged Emma for her hesitation, calling her indecisive or foolish. Others quietly admired her courage to face the truth instead of hiding behind a facade. Emma ignored the noise, focusing instead on the quiet moments where she could think without pressure. Lucas reached out again, but this time his words came with no demands or expectations. "Emma, I'm here whenever you're ready. No rush, no pressure. Just me, hoping you'll find your way back to me if it's meant to be." His honesty was a balm, but it also reminded her of the fragility of what was left between them. Mark, too, gave her space, though it was painful for him. He sent gentle messages of support, reminding her that he cared, that his love was patient and waiting. "Take all the time you need," he wrote. "I'll be here." Emma's days became a delicate balancing act. She revisited old memories with Lucas, the laughter, the dreams, and the pain. She also cherished the quiet strength Mark had offered, the stability and kindness that had helped heal her broken heart. Each man represented a different future, and each future felt both impossible and necessary. One rainy afternoon, Emma found herself sitting in a cafe, staring out at the wet streets. The world outside blurred like her thoughts, unclear and shifting. She realized that this choice wasn't just about love. It was about finding herself again. She had been so focused on the men in her life that she had forgotten to ask, "Who am I without them?" With trembling hands, she pulled out a journal she hadn't touched in years. Words poured out of her, confusion, hope, fear, and dreams yet unspoken. Writing gave her clarity, a way to untangle the knot inside her heart. She wrote about the love she once had with Lucas, the healing she found with Mark, and the person she was slowly becoming, stronger, wiser, more aware. Days turned into weeks, and Emma slowly felt a new sense of peace. The answers she sought didn't come all at once, but in small moments of truth. In a smile shared with a stranger, in the quiet comfort of a friend's advice, and in the strength she found within herself. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Emma stood by her window, watching the sky turn shades of pink and gold. She knew the journey wasn't over, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she had learned that love wasn't about rushing to a decision. It was about patience, honesty, and the courage to face whatever came next. Emma whispered to herself, "I will choose when I'm ready, not for them, but for me." And in that quiet promise, she found hope, a hope that would guide her through the days to come. Emma's decision to step back from everything weighed heavily on her, yet with every passing day, a clarity slowly began to emerge. The quiet moments she carved out for herself, away from judgment and expectation, became her sanctuary. She found herself reflecting not only on the men she cared for, but on the woman she was, and the woman she wanted to be. One morning, as dawn broke gently through her bedroom window, Emma sat with a cup of coffee, the steam curling upward like her swirling thoughts. She recalled the moments she had shared with Lucas, their laughter under starry skies, whispered dreams, and promises made in innocence. But alongside those memories were the shadows of his sudden disappearance, the silence that followed, and the ache it left behind. Those wounds hadn't faded. They had simply been buried beneath time. Yet, Lucas's return wasn't just a reminder of the past. It was a challenge, a chance to confront old fears, and to see if the love they once had could be rebuilt on new foundations. But rebuilding would require more than hope. It would require trust, forgiveness, and a willingness to face uncomfortable truths. Emma's phone buzzed softly beside her. A message from Mark appeared. "Thinking of you. No rush, no pressure. Just here." His words felt like a warm embrace, steady and reassuring. Mark had never asked for more than her honesty. He had offered patience and understanding when she had nothing left to give. As the days turned into weeks, Emma found herself caught between two worlds, the passionate, unpredictable past with Lucas and the calm, reliable future with Mark. Each man represented a different kind of love, a different vision of happiness. But what Emma realized was that neither could define her happiness unless she defined it first. One afternoon, she met with a therapist, a decision she had postponed for too long. In the quiet of that office, Emma began to unravel the tangled threads of her heart. She spoke about abandonment, fear, and the courage it took to hope again. She admitted her confusion, the guilt she felt for not being able to give clear answers, and her deep desire to heal, not just for herself, but for those she cared about. Sometimes, her therapist said gently, love isn't about choosing one person over another. It's about choosing yourself first, healing your wounds, and learning to stand on your own 2 feet. Only then can you love fully and freely. Those words echoed inside Emma long after she left the office. Choosing herself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. She needed to find peace within before she could truly open her heart again. That evening, Emma invited both Lucas and Mark to meet her, not as rivals or suitors, but as parts of her past and present. They sat in a quiet cafe, the atmosphere thick with unspoken emotion. Emma looked at each man and spoke with a newfound strength. I can't promise either of you a future right now, she began, because I'm still figuring out who I am. I need to heal, to understand what love means for me, not just what I've been told it should be. She paused, searching their faces for understanding. I don't want to hurt either of you, but I also can't continue living in this limbo. Lucas nodded slowly, his eyes soft but resolute. I understand, Emma. I've made mistakes, but I'm willing to wait. Not just for your love, but for your happiness, even if that means stepping back. Mark reached out, placing a hand gently over hers. I'm here no matter what. I want you to be whole, to be free to make the right choice for you. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, but this time they were tears of release. She wasn't alone. Both men cared for her deeply, but more importantly, they respected her need to find herself. Over the next few weeks, Emma dedicated herself to rediscovery. She took long walks in the park, surrounded herself with friends who reminded her of joy, and explored passions she had set aside. The process wasn't easy. There were days when doubt gnawed at her and loneliness crept in. But each step forward was a victory, a reclaiming of her identity. One evening, as she sat by a fire pit with close friends, Emma realized something profound. Love wasn't about possession or certainty. It was about freedom, the freedom to choose, to change, and to grow. And for the first time in a long time, she felt free. Her journey was far from over, but Emma knew she was no longer running from the past or hiding from the future. She was walking her own path, at her own pace, guided by honesty, courage, and a heart ready to embrace whatever came next. Emma felt the quiet strength growing within her, a resilience forged through months of heartache, reflection, and painful honesty. The tangled emotions that had once threatened to consume her were now beginning to untangle, revealing clarity beneath the chaos. She no longer felt trapped between two men. Instead, she was discovering herself, the woman who had the right to choose her own happiness, regardless of anyone else's expectations. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emma found herself standing at the edge of a small lake near her childhood home. The golden leaves danced on the breeze, and the water shimmered with the last light of day. It was a place she hadn't visited in years, but something about the peacefulness of the scene grounded her. She thought about everything she had been through, the broken promises, the interrupted vows, the raw and vulnerable moments that had tested her heart. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket. It was a message from Lucas. I'm thinking about you. Whenever you want to talk, I'm here. She smiled faintly but didn't reply immediately. Then came a message from Mark. Hope your day is peaceful. Take your time. No pressure. Both men still cared deeply, but Emma had learned the importance of space. Space to breathe, to heal, and to decide. Emma's thoughts wandered back to the conversations she had shared with each of them. Lucas had been the love of her youth, passionate, intense, but flawed by absence and mistakes. Mark was the steady presence that had walked beside her when she thought all hope was lost. Both had shaped her life, but neither could define it. She knew now that the answer wasn't about choosing between Lucas and Mark. It was about choosing herself and living a life that felt authentic. She deserved love that didn't come with fear or hesitation, a love that made her feel safe and seen. As the weeks passed, Emma began to rebuild her world around that truth. She returned to hobbies she'd abandoned, painting, reading, and long walks in the park. She spent evenings with friends who reminded her of laughter and light. Slowly, she rediscovered joy in simple moments, and with it came the strength to face the future without fear. One evening, she invited both Lucas and Mark to meet at a quiet restaurant. The air was thick with anticipation, but Emma felt calm. She had reached a place where honesty mattered more than certainty. Looking at both men, she spoke with quiet resolve. This journey has taught me so much about love and about myself. I've realized that I can't live in the past, nor can I rush into a future, because it seems easier. I need a love that lifts me, that makes me feel whole, not torn between what was and what could be. Lucas nodded, a shadow of regret in his eyes, but also a hint of acceptance. I can't promise to be perfect, Emma, but I want to be better, not just for you, but for myself. Mark reached out, taking her hand gently. I want to be the one who supports you, who stands by you no matter what, but only if that's what you truly want. Emma squeezed Mark's hand, feeling a warmth that was steady and real. She looked at Lucas, then back at Mark, and smiled softly. I need time. Time to heal, to grow, and to be sure. I hope you both can understand. They both did. It was a difficult truth, but one that brought unexpected peace. Neither pushed her, and neither withdrew. Instead, they became part of her healing journey. Reminders that love, in all its forms, could be patient and kind. In the weeks that followed, Emma's heart continued to open, to new possibilities, new hopes, and a future that was hers to shape. She knew the path wouldn't be easy. Love rarely is. But now, she faced it with courage, honesty, and a deep understanding of her own worth. For the first time in a long time, Emma felt free, not because she had found all the answers, but because she was finally asking the right questions. Who am I? What do I deserve? How do I want to love and be loved? As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Emma whispered to herself, I'm ready to live my truth. And with that, she stepped forward into a future filled with hope, resilience, and the promise of new beginnings. Emma stood at the edge of a new chapter, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The past, the interrupted vows, the lingering doubts, the intense emotions, had shaped her, but they no longer defined her. She was no longer the woman caught between two loves, desperately searching for answers. She had become someone who understood that love begins with oneself. The morning sunlight streamed through the curtains as she prepared for the day ahead. A sense of calm enveloped her. She wasn't rushing toward a decision anymore. Instead, she was moving forward with purpose, embracing the uncertainty that life often brings. The lesson she had learned was clear. Love could not be forced, and healing was not a destination, but a journey. Her phone chimed softly. A message from Lucas appeared. I hope you're finding peace. Whatever happens, I'm grateful for you. She smiled softly, feeling no pressure, only gratitude. It was different now, respectful, patient, and free of expectation. Another message popped up from Mark. Always here when you need me. Take care of yourself. Emma felt the warmth of his kindness, the steady support that had been her anchor. She realized that both men had offered her gifts. Lucas, the reminder of youthful passion and courage to face mistakes. Mark, the quiet strength and unwavering loyalty that had helped her heal. But the most important gift was the one she had given herself, the courage to be honest, to feel deeply, and to wait for a love that felt true and whole. Days turned into weeks, and Emma's world began to bloom anew. She painted again, filling canvases with colors that spoke of hope and renewal. She spent evenings with friends, laughter filling the spaces where silence had once reigned. The heavy weight of indecision lifted, replaced by a lightness born of self-acceptance. One afternoon, she walked through the town square, feeling the breeze on her face and the sun warming her skin. She paused by the fountain, watching children play and couples walk hand in hand. The future was unwritten, but for the first time, that was a source of excitement, not fear. Emma knew she might one day choose a path with Lucas or Mark, or perhaps find a new love altogether. But that choice would come from a place of strength and clarity, not desperation or confusion. She had learned that true love requires patience, not just with others, but with oneself. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in hues of purple and gold, Emma sat by her window, a journal in her lap. She wrote not about the past or the men who had shaped her story, but about herself, the dreams she wanted to pursue, the fears she would face, and the happiness she deserved. Her phone chimed again. This time, it was a message from a close friend. Proud of you. Keep shining. Emma smiled, feeling the gentle push of encouragement that had carried her through the darkest days. She closed her journal and looked out at the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. The journey wasn't over, but Emma was ready. Ready to embrace love in all its forms, ready to face whatever challenges came her way, and ready to live a life filled with honesty and hope. The vows had been interrupted, yes. But what had grown from that moment was a story far richer than any wedding day could have promised. A story of resilience, growth, and the unwavering power of choosing oneself. Emma whispered softly, "This is just the beginning." And with that, she stepped forward, heart open, into the promise of a new tomorrow.